Okay, so welcome.
Okay, let me share it.
Okay, and we've got 1 more minute, so let's wait this minute, 1 more minute for people to join. And I've got a few words of introduction, introducing yourself. Sorry, I'm just. So welcome, Dr. Gamze Karayaz. She is an instructor and researcher at FMV Isik University in project and operations management. She's a founder and former president of PMI Turkey chapter. Today, she serves as PMI region mentor. Gamze has led projects ranging from European funded higher education to systems engineering, modeling, and simulation. Welcome, Gamze Karayaz.
Great. Do you see my screen? Well,
Yes, we do.
should I start or should we wait for a few minutes or?
12:30, so it's just, yeah, we can start.
Hmm?
Go
Okay.
ahead. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Well, it's Friday night at 8:30 p.m. in Istanbul. So I just want to say TGI Friday to everyone. And before I start, I'd like to, my presentation, I'd like to thank you very much for this very grateful opportunity. And thanks to the Ukrainian chapter, Olivier, and everyone who puts their hearts on this effort. And as being a native Turkish, so it meant a lot for me to be able to help, at least in a way that I can, to contribute to children who are affected by the earthquake deeply. So when I got this opportunity, I thought that why don't I talk about NGOs in disaster recovery? So as all of you, or most of you, like I'm also a volunteer with PMI. So I thought, okay, I know what's NGO, and I can deal with the topic and so on. But to be honest, didn't turn out that way that I think. It's a lot in NGOs and with the disaster management. So the one thing that I didn't want to go with the project management in disaster recovery, but at the end, we may still need to talk about project management, as we all know. It's a great methodology to work with almost everything. So the motivation comes from the recent earthquake, obviously, in what happened in February 6, 2023, and like the almost half of the rest of the country, which we are not in the area that happened, but the rest of the country that happened, we're still in shock and about the magnitude of the earthquake. And the first thing what we did is intuitively just donate and help them. But then we realized that it's really something huge happened. And over the first 72 hours, we didn't sleep. And I check on my students as an academician, and that to see whether if there was someone on there and on the area. And it's been like a crazy, like a month. We didn't sleep, and we were checking the social media and the news like 7/24. But when we're back to work, actually, we still was like one part of our heart is still there, thinking what we can do more. And so this opportunity came, and then again, I really are thankful for me to talk about this topic on today. Again, I thought at the beginning, and I know what NGOs do, what it does, what's the role, what we do as a volunteer. But after some little bit research, and turn out that talking about NGOs is really challenging. So it does make me really get out of my comfort zone. And so it wasn't like teaching project management or operations. And I'm hoping that it will give you a little bit more insight on NGOs, but what happened in Turkey. And and I would like to apologize in advance in any case if I miss any reference with my readings that I did so far over the last week, and also if any misinterpretation based on my perception, any of the readings, so that you may have crossed already and you know what about it, and apologize for that in advance. And again, this is just an informative speech and a story a little bit, what happened and what could have been done better to prevent disasters like that for the future. And thank you very much for listening, and happy to hear your feedbacks, and as well as questions and comments and anything at the end. So I will first talk about the NGOs and their role in disaster recovery. And I will also do some academic research on some of the studies. I did the research, and I bring out some of them on past disasters and findings. And I will also talk about the recent earthquake situation and the observation from Turkey. And finally, I will suggest a few things, results, recommendations, and try to leave you with some insight at the end. And I will start this report on, got it from World Economic Forum, and they have this global risk assessment and surveys, and they publish annually. So this one for the 2023 published on January. And I want you to take a look at it a bit carefully. And it says, like, in the short term, the second of the top on the left, and you see the severe risk that we will see over the next 2 years or more is, other than the one on the top, is the second is the disaster, natural disasters such as earthquakes, floods, or typhoon, or any catastrophe that is not really man-made. So, and apparently NGOs play quite a big role or instrumental role of accessing the resources in when the disaster happened in the area for recovery. So having said that, that was my motivation to start with this conversation or discussion. And my point of knowledge on this, that recent earthquake has shown me that there's a need for something bigger than only one NGO. And you can call it umbrella or meta or joint networks, that we will come up with the conclusion at the end. But there's definitely something need. There is a need for bigger than only one NGO, which is not a surprise, obviously. And it's been a lot of work done with the disasters on that field. but we need that is to be work efficiently. So immediate response that we can have it, and for an agile recovery, or perhaps we could even see it as a radical program management, as Michel Terry was defining like a week ago in another conference to support the earthquake. So, but whatever we call that, there's a need for type of a network of NGOs, which structured apparently appropriately to be recognized. And I'm hoping that that's what you will get out of my discussion here. Okay, so before we go forward, then as I said, I thought I knew what's NGO and what to do as a volunteer and whatnot. But then when I did into the research, it was like a black hole. Like I can tell you, there's many different works based on the target and based on the structure, based on the governance, and based on the different type of disasters. So I decided to take one single definition in the purpose of this presentation. So if you want to define an NGO, that we can take this from Mandel and Bassi, and that they define in 2015. So NGOs are the organizations that are nonprofit making voluntarily and independent of the government, engaged in activities and concerning various societal and development issues. When you look at from that way, NGOs in disaster management has been their impact been increasing due to the growing complexity of the catastrophe that we can have any day in anywhere, especially if you're prone to disaster, a country prone to disaster. So the role of them mostly cited as like during a disaster to have a quick response and to try and save as many lives as it can with the given funds. And we know the ultimate motivation of being in NGO, either you paid or not, is just to help and serve the public interest. However, that should be independently from governments. And the roles of the NGOs in disaster management has been discussed a lot. But what I found is like if you have such a big risk, let's call it this risk, and it's really difficult for governments alone to manage. So you need to have NGOs to go the ground, and in the event of a disaster, they are mostly the first ones on the ground, and they're the first one to face immediate challenges and to make emergent decisions. So as the ultimate goal is to save life, and that means that some of the decisions has to be made by NGOs. But in reality, where the NGOs are not able to make decisions due to some legality or rules or etc., they're just the voices of the people on the ground, and they can create a good public image or public awareness what's going on. So, and different types of NGOs exist in local and global, based on their interest and targeted audience, but in the end, they just have to manage the risk while they are on the ground. So each risk apparently concentrated, specific, and customized efforts. But we can talk about several cross-cutting principles can support the preparedness across different type of situation they have. So we can outline a few principles in that context, and they need to strengthen the risk identification and foresight, which is perhaps before even what happens, and then recalibrating the present value of future risk, and then investing a lot of multi-domain, I call it, risk preparedness, and then strengthening at the end. So the response will be in cooperation with other NGOs, and then it will be quite like a quick and easy to just reach whatever needs to be. So almost all of them, even though they have a different type of target audience as an NGO, they intervene to serve regardless of their region, of their target population. And again, they're the one, mostly the first one who's on the ground when a disaster happens. And also what is expected from NGOs in the literature and in reality to empower local volunteers for that cause where needed. So they can just flow in directly and start doing what they need to do. But there are some surveys about the NGOs tells that when it comes to disaster, they're the most trusted entities by the public. So if you ask 100 person, you get like almost 43 of them to tell you that they're the trusted one to act effectively in disaster situations. Even with the international institutions, they're like far behind with a score of like 18 to 20. Well, the governments and the private companies came last. It's around maximum 5%. So despite the strong reputation, NGOs working in the humanitarian field, they face major challenges as to their capability, operating methods, and even their identity. So speaking of their identity, then I just want to explain that their characteristics. And I use these specific and exact quotes from Philip Berkman, which is as a known author and academician in that field. And so trying to define NGO's identity, and he proposed like 5 different or 5 distinguishing characteristics. The first one is the concept of volunteering, okay? And that comes with the notion of association. So like example, the grouping together or of private individuals with a nonprofit project for the benefit of others. Or not, it's just a not-profit entity in terms of those who are free to join the project with their will, of course, and considered to be vested with rights with a view to achieving a common purpose for the benefit of others, and not just for their members alone. So the second characteristics that I identify from the literature is the legality, and that also close tie with the identity of them. So it's the legal form of the nonprofit association according to wherever they are in their national laws. And so it's a special legal framework. It's symbolized, specialized, or depending on their national legislation. And the third one is the relationship with public and private authorities, either both at the national level or at the international level. So the fact of being an autonomous, as what we expect from NGOs, that according to their national laws, wherever they've been established, that is the space concerning the state or private powers. So the state, the government, or any agency relates to that, not be at the origin of the creation of the NGO. Even it may have links with the state later on. So to give an example, like the same autonomy must exist about the private economy, the religious communities, or different sectors, or even some different groups. And so that's what we call the relationship as a characteristic. And the fourth one refers to values. The reference to values involving both a voluntary commitment and the declared will to ensure that the work of all these groups is consistent with a civic approach geared to a varying extent to the civil societies. So, and the reference to those values implying at the same time as a freely consented commitment and the will to include associative action in a citizen dimension, which may be considered that like inserted in a democratic framework. So NGO thus becomes one of the segments of what we call a civil society. The final one, the characteristic of it, is the transnational nature. And the transnational nature of the action that tells us any action that is carried out in another country other than the country of origin. So where it seeks to defend human rights or to intervene for the protection of the environment or intervene with a disaster or a sustainable development. And so having said that, and we know now which type of NGO I'm actually discussing in here. So in the few slides, in the next few slides, I will discuss some academic studies that points out different roles of NGOs and specifically in disaster management. And then I will move to Turkey and what happened and what can be done more and what could have done. So, and let's move on to the first study. Wait a minute. Oh, okay. Before I move on to those studies that I gather from scholarly journals, I kind of like made a list, some specific roles of NGOs in respect to disaster management. And we don't see too much on the pre-disaster in the literature, but I think it's important to mention. So NGOs have the power and the knowledge to train and the create capacity building for their staff and task forces if that something happens. So, and then they also have a powerful set of information channel to the area and the district and the region, and they have also great image for advocacy and planning before something happens. And when they do that with a regular contact with the community, and it will be a great deal for those countries who's really prone to big disasters. But mostly a lot of work done in the literature and in real life during the disaster, what they have to do. So what my gathering from what I'm reading, so one of the first things that they need to activate of channel of warning dissemination to reach all of these target groups. And with the help of administration, they can make a wide dissemination of warning, and that may happen soon. And they can also work on the immediate rescue and first aid, including psychological aid, supply of the food, water, medicine, we call them wash, and like including hygiene, and any other immediate need materials. So, and they also make sure that they assess the damage and they ensure what's going on with the sanitation and hygiene in the disaster areas. But after the post-disaster, which means that we are completely get out of the during phase, and everything is completed, is finished. So what do we need to do for recover the existing conditions or do better? So in that case, NGOs can help in the technical and material aid in reconstruction, which is mostly the task of the governments, but you can still supply, and they can still do funding to raise, to assist for those who need help still in there to recover. And they also check the monitoring and monitor and the improvement of the conditions. And this is, I think it's really important, because we're talking about the NGOs here being the voice of the masses. Someone has to do that, right? So I think it's a big responsibility from the NGOs perspective. And at the end, I like that the quote here, and they really are the voice of the masses, because in reality, in practice, they can't really send their voices to is necessary when something happened in the disaster. And that I think it's important for the NGOs to carry that task as well. So let's take a look at the few academic studies that I brought out here for you. And again, there's a lot, but a few things that attracts me in these studies. So I just briefly mention what I have done and how we can actually use them for future. And the first one is from a case study on the recovery process from Philippines, and for the famous typhoon. And so the Philippines is one of the most disaster-prone countries, like Turkey, and their government has initiated the disaster risk reduction even since before this typhoon happened. So, and this was legislated in, I think it's 2010, and then they added different capacities and different plans on built up on that the Measure Act. So what's interested in here, they they utilize or empower, they call local government units like LGU, and that participating of all the stakeholders, including the private sectors of non-governmental organizations in every level. So with a focus on the community level, obviously. And under this program and those institutions regarding the this risk reduction were reorganized into a different one. So they call it National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council. And they also add another unit on that is called National Disaster Risk Reduction Office, if I'm not mistaken. So, and all of these were created by government, but they're all integrated in those local government units, they call it. So the policy of government in that case respect the capacity and of all of these small level local government units and communities, and that also they can help the improvement of the community's physical, social, and economic resilience and consideration to local conditions and the existing capacities of communities that are put as in principle and supported by the government. So, and this seems like an ambitious plan. However, toward sustainable reconstruction and recovery of the survivors of the local people is kind of become essential in the end, actually. And because the communities even helped before this disaster happened. So they fundamentally knew what to deal and with the recovery process. And so if the tragedy of disaster again occur repeatedly unless long-term recovery and the fundamental problems of communities are considered with that model. And so what I found with my research, and that of course there are some cases studied in the past disasters that survive disasters of those who are the survivors or they survive themselves, made efforts to not only the reconstruction and also the revitalization of their community or society in the long term. And that gives us some insights, but still many of the studies on community recovery focus on the support agencies. And with that research, they actually found something remarkable, and they call it people's organization. When the government supports those local government units, and they are established among the communities of small groups, such as the fishermen's or women's or drivers or whatever that is, the community actually exists in the disaster area. So they're community-based, but at the same time membership-based, but as they primarily pursue interest of their members. So the people organizations, aka PO, as that's what I would call. So really cater more for the urban and rural poor, which are the ones mostly affected by such big disaster. And another one that I found interested comes from China. And again, China is one of the vulnerable countries for the natural hazards, but most of the work done for the big and really big scale hazards. So in that paper that I reference here, they actually look for the small and medium scale natural hazards. So, and that especially after the 2008 Wuhan earthquake, and it's really help for the disaster relief. And in this study, there actually studies the national disaster relief networks for established by China government called NDRN. So, and the main idea is here to have these small networks or small NGOs to work with the one funding agency, which is actually the name also One Foundation. So that is one of the most active public fundraising activities in China. They engage with these 20 independently operating regional networks that are focused on these small and medium scale natural disaster. So they look at the structures, operations, and challenges. What they found is listed in here in the slide, but it's just starts with the discussion for the networked organization structure, and also combined with the hierarchy and the coordinated external and internal network operations becomes like a mechanism, has a specific entry threshold to ensure healthy network expansion. And the periodic member of NGO in this network training to enhance the network capacity. So even reciprocal and the cooperative government NGO relationship. So these could be, of course, a useful reference for the establishment and development such big networks in the other countries. And another one comes from the Japan. So, and that study here draws on the disaster research literature in exploring the social context in which the groups of that famous Kobe earthquake volunteers converged in January 1995, and they formed organizations that continue to respond to national and international disasters during the last at least 15 years. So the study actually summarized the one of the authors who joined one of these network volunteer in an NGO which is active in disaster management, and they traces that work. So the basic conclusion in that case, over the years, organized the volunteerism in Japan has witnessed some struggles, and first one between the development of formal organization, emphasizing interagency cooperation, and the coordination of volunteers on the other hand, which I think is one of the problems that we have seen here in Turkey for the recent earthquake. And so as from this example, the importance of the governments, is really widely recognized in disaster relief, but the concept of project governance has not really been examined too much, especially for the large disasters. And this paper here, you see the reference that claims to do that. And the aim is here to assess the understanding and applicability of the project governance to NGOs, so which operates under the disaster relief mode, let's say. And so to address this, they look at the 2010 Haiti earthquake and with one international NGO, and they analyze from a project governance perspective. That the research reveals that effective project governance not only fills the governance gap between the corporate governance and the project management, but also between the disaster relief and the project management. So what they find different implication of the dimensions of governance elements. So when you look at the literature in the project governance, you can find, I don't know, that's like around 20 elements, but they find the 9 dimensions of them that was implied here. So namely, their structure, the sponsorship, accountability, transparency, decision-making, stakeholder engagement, risk minimization, monitoring and evaluation, knowledge management, and ethics. So, and that could give us some insight on the governance. But here we have a comparison between the South Korea and Japan. And so we know the roles of NGOs in disaster management is quite important and are increasing, but even though against that, positive improvement, is still there's a backdrop of their being a critical sector for disaster management. And we know the NGOs are like a catalyst and intermediaries by enhancing the communication and acceleration for the collective actions to improve community resilience. And in this one, this study examines those values actually of NGOs in disaster management and the governance in Japan and South Korea. So I don't want to go too long on this one, but just to say that they've been making qualitative research, intervene really in depth with people who's engaging with the NGOs to explore their value at the end. And here they find out during the response phase of any event or disaster happens, and they simply and swiftly find unmet needs and distribute relief supplies. So the activities of these such NGOs of South Korea and Japan for marginalized people, the importance of the psychological therapy. And there are some differences, of course, with the culture and the way of their thinking of what needs to be done on the ground. So, and the Japan, in the response phase, obviously, the Japan has an intermediary organization that manages volunteers for a long time, but NGOs in South Korea, but by contrast, have no comparable organization, which really has resulted in confusion and conflicts. But at the end, they both face similar limitations, like the lack of resources and intense competition among NGOs. All right, so I guess I'm almost done with my time, so I'm just gonna move it up quickly. I'm going to pass all of these others, and then I will tell you what I have found in all of these readings. So, and my take is that a network or disaster NGO or umbrella NGO or joint networks that may have effective and sustained coordination and cooperation generally allow the NGOs to have some influence over the disaster relief operations. And one of the things that you need to obviously build trust with the disaster affected communities. So if you have this network type of NGO that you can cooperate closely with the local communities, so you can have more durable disaster relief and recovery services are delivered. And however, a brief literature that told me that most of these networks has been initiated by large-scale foundations or governments to have a significant coverage, with the kind of like less deep modes often failing to maintain to close local resident connections. Obviously, what I propose here is not a new idea, so but difficult to accomplish in real situations. There's been different efforts, such as the Asian Disaster Reduction Response, or like the Gujarat State Disaster Management Authority, East Coast Development Forum, and finally our own AFAD, we call it Disaster and Emergency Management Presidency in Turkish. It's a network constructed in Turkey to fight disasters after 99 Marmara earthquake, which really had a lot of damage by that time. And combining all of these things from the literature, and what we found is there's a weak governance, obviously loose coordination, inter-NGO cooperation failures because they become competitive and they don't know what to do. Or if you see in the slide, like the Healing and Connell find out that they can just came and distributed some turpolines or tents and then went back. And that tells us about the ineffectual cooperation. So disorganized participation results in such a case in poor or no info exchange. And one of the things that also I take from all of these research, that all of these, not all of these obviously, but mostly these efforts and networks are not sustainable. And there's a quick termination and more out from the area, but when the earth strikes again, which is what happened in Turkey within the same day, like a big magnitude 2 strike, the NGOs are not really prepared to provide urgent services. And this may depend of the laws or the country where you are in, but what we really mostly find out that the are really important of the well-coordinated collaboration between the public and nonprofit. And one of the things is to create community resilience, and that was explained before today by Thomas Valenta, talk about the individual one, but it's important to create a resilience in the community. So because of the time limitation, I will just move on. And I like to come to the real situation, what we have now here in Turkey. What you see in the screen is going to tell you the area is almost half of the country and half goes to the Syrian border. And there was two major one, like over 7.5 in almost one day, and created like really impossible recovery for 10 cities, and recently government added another 3 cities to the disaster because it's been a quite tragedy. So Turkey is not like how you say foreign on those type of situation, because we lie in the land of active fault lines. So, and we had that a lot of these big earthquakes that you can see some of the list on the left on the screen. But as of today, when I got this like last week from the OHA office for the UNs, that you can see the numbers yourself in the screen. There's a lot to do, and there's a lot to put in as an effort, as an investment. But what we need to do for future is, I think, more important at this point, because in any time it's expected another earthquake. So we need to adjust our lives, our policies, our everything based on that. So, and here, what the NGOs role in Turkey, and as you see, today is active. It's almost more than 100K NGO. So when you look at their the target audience, as you could see, based on the different regions, of course, but the first one is the professional societies, like we have, relates to project management. The second one, the religious purposes. The third one is sports related, and the fourth one is the education and research. And finally, is the fifth one on the list, is the humanitarian help. So as you can see, although we have lots of NGOs, but not every NGOs relates to what we are discussing here. And if you look at the regions, and you see the Southeast Anatolia here, like the 6% of all of the NGOs are located in here. It's because of the refugees, it's because of the development purposes, and so still could be a lot more after that big earthquake. But if you look at the numbers here, and you can see like some facts, almost considering the population of Turkey, and it's almost like a one NGO for 600 people. And so let's move on a bit more. And I am very sorry that I kind of like passed my time. And I'm asking to my hosts here, I can cut it, or they can ask later on, or I'm just gonna move on quickly to finish it. So
we have 3 questions. We have 3 questions. So you choose if you continue or you want to answer the questions.
Depending on
because we've got 6 minutes.
All right. So I'm just gonna use my like 2 minutes to finish.
Okay.
Then I'll just try to answer the questions. I didn't even know I can make it an hour, so I wish I could have accepted Oliver's proposition earlier. So it means like it would take 70 minutes, obviously. Anyway, so what happened in Turkey? We have the late arrival of aid to many regions, especially the city called Antakya, which is in the Syrian border, and one of the 10 or right now 13 affected provinces, and this city completely demolished. And as you see the news picture or like screenshot here, this was the same reaction on 1999. So, and this actually made people to question about what we have been doing over since 1999 in the public. And there was a lot of issue with the competency in timely decision making, although we have this one sole authority was established after 1999's earthquake. However, still, there's a lot of misguided decision, let's put it that way, so I don't get into trouble. And that raised the question of level of trust in state association in the public eye. And tents were not set up correctly. There was not enough tents. There was not enough materials and etc. And there was also cost on rescue efforts and the debris removal. And another observation that I gathered from the media coverage and the NGOs reports, inadequacies in the measures that could have been taken before and coordination after the earthquake in the region. So I'm not going to get into more in this one, but many of the same problems were reported in the past, have again repeatedly over and over in the media. So that raised the question, any lessons that we have not learned from the past? And putting everything together, and this is the summary of my observation, and I can share the presentation. You can take a look at it later. But the networking with other NGOs are necessary that we found since the time zero on the ground. And there's one initiation that I come up, I mean, not I come up, but I cross while I researching, which I didn't know actually. And this is a recent initiative for some NGOs like that, the ones that I quoted from the literature, called Afet, which means disaster in Turkish, with the help of the 19 NGOs and 8 supporting association. So their goal is to be on the ground in the first 72 hours. So one of the first founder of this initiation is one famous rock singer, and that I will show you in a moment. That's in an irony. Is criticized a lot to be on the ground quite early. So, and all of these that I thought is the goal of the month of the UN, April. So we should be try to revitalize the global partnership for sustainable development, which is expected from NGOs beyond and above politics. So, and it could have been better if we were prepared better, as you see that we are now on the critical resource for the levels, which we still need. And also, as you see that the singer on the right down on the slide, so his NGO being nominated, he is nominated for one of the 100 most influential people for this year. So it's brings good and bad, and when we put all together, I just wanted to say, any system performs as it is designed as it is. So this is what I learned from from my studies in systems engineering. So I will leave you with these two models. You may think it's appropriate to get a networked NGO, one from ACOF, Russell Interactive Planning. The other one is from Beer's Viable System Modeling, which we also did some work on it as like the project management system modeling. And hopefully we don't have to get tested again with such tragedy, but it's really important for NGOs to take responsibility and prepare for potential disaster, for creating systems that are resilient and able to adapt to changes in their environment.
Okay, that was great. Thank you very much. Sorry.
Which I pass my time as an academician. You know, when you give us a topic, we can talk all day. So I'm very sorry for that, but I guess I have a lot to say. So
thank you very much. That was great. Do we have time for one question? Because it's past.
If you have burning questions,
maybe quick question. I don't know if you have answered. So thank you very much for the presentation. Did you find information on the general breakdown on funding sources for NGOs, government versus private?
I meant to look at it, but there is a lot. So when you call the NGOs, they're like fundamentally financially depending. So government helps them. However, mostly they're the ones who raise for funds.
Okay, so
yeah.
Thank you very much. That was really, really exciting and great. Thanks a lot.
And thank you so much. And I'm sorry that I took a bit time off the panel after me. And I hope, and I can thank you, everyone who puts their heart on this event.
There are two more questions. I will pass these questions to you so we can answer them later on. There are two more questions.
Please add me on LinkedIn, and I also have my Gmail over there. And I like to thank you, teşekkür ederim in Turkish, and yay, TGI Friday for me.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so I'm passing the floor, the moderator floor to Juicy. And enjoy the panel discussion now. Thank you very much. That was great experience for me as well. And thank you everyone contributing to this great event. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, and hello. Thank you, Gamze, for your presentation.
Juicy, we can't really understand you. You're very silent.
Oh.
Oh, why I cannot stop this recording?
Much better now.
Sorry, I want to stop recording.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
You are very faint, Juicy, very faint.
Very faint. Okay, let's see.
Anyone can help me to stop recording? Because I cannot stop recording. I don't know why.